Slate. Explainer. Do Jews really control the media? Only the fun parts, by Brian Palmer, October 5th, 2010. Rick Sanchez. CNN anchor Rick Sanchez was fired last week for calling The Daily Show host Jon Stewart a bigot and implying that Jews control the media. Quote, everyone who runs CNN is a lot like Jon Stewart, and a lot of people who run all the other networks are a lot like Stewart, he said, trying to explain that Jews are not an oppressed minority. Setting aside the propriety of Sanchez's claim, is he right? Do Jews control the media? Maybe the movies, but not the news. If Sanchez was referring to the people in the television business, he is wrong. Not one of the major television news operations, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, CBS News, or NBC News, is currently headed by a Jewish executive. That includes Ken Jotz, the man who fired Sanchez. Or at least none of these executives has talked about being Jewish in a public forum. The internet is littered with rumors about various media moguls being Jewish, but few of those claims are backed.
The majority of Americans today have an unfavorable view of Israel. When you think about it, the masters of the universe are Jews. You know, we've got Altman and AI, we got Zuckerberg, we got Sergey Brin. It's us. Amelia, we got to get our digital sneakers on.
I want you to reflect on how unbelievable that really is. He's saying, hey, look, I have a list of Jews who are the masters of the universe. They control everything. They can control public opinion. And then he says, we have them. We, the Jews, have them. They're us.
More Jews at the head of the country's major newspapers, but it's still a stretch to say that these publications are controlled by them. Even in New York City, where around 12% of the population is Jewish, there isn't any indication of Jewish dominance.
First foreign visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first? Left, right, Ms. Adams.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo?
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my fourth trip to Israel.
Mr. Stringer?
My goal would be to take my first trip to Israel.
Mr. Mamdani?
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
With Hamas.
That's stupid. One, we need to mind our business, stay out of certain things, but why? You know, why involve the U.S. in something that has nothing to do with us whatsoever? Because Big Daddy said so, and the U.S. is not Big Daddy.
And it doesn't make sense, like 2% of, we're the biggest, smallest minority in America, yeah. You know? And we had no voice. We had no eligibility to access our taxpayers' dollars as the biggest minority and the biggest suppressed people.
Now, Project Esther proposes a rebrand of all critics of Israel as, surprise, surprise, Hamas supporters.
This project is happening as a way to supposedly combat anti-Semitism, but make no mistake, I've been reading about this for quite some time. The step here is to go further than Biden did. They actually say that, to go further than Biden did and to weed it out. So notice the language that is used.
Historic expansion for Jewish businesses, not only in New York, but across the country.
Yeah, Jewish businesses will now be classified as minority business enterprises, making them eligible for billions of dollars in grants, contract, and loans. Duvi Honig is the founder and CEO of the Orthodox Jewish Chamber of Commerce, and he's joining us this morning to discuss the impact of this new classification. So good morning to you, Duvi. Great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
Yeah, I mean, huge week for you. Very exciting. Can you talk specifically about what this change means then?
Absolutely. It's so historic. Think about it. The Hispanic community is 19% of the U.S. population. Yeah. The African American is 15% of the U.S. population. The Jewish population is 2%. And all the minorities, MBDA, billions of dollars of grants since 1969 when they established the Minority Business Development Association under the U.S. Department of Commerce. There's hundreds of programs and billions of dollars of revenues and grants and all different contracts from startups to big companies who are eligible, including banks who are obligated to give specific amounts of loans to minorities that Jews were not included in. Yeah. And no one understood it. And people always voicing frustration. Jews are always the underdog.
Key takeaways. America, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, and anti-American pro-Palestinian movement is part of a global Hamas support network. Pay attention to this, guys. 2, Supported by activists and funders dedicated to destroying capitalism and democracy, the HSN benefits from the support and training of America's overseas enemies. Everybody pay attention. 3, the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism intends to enlist partners in a coordinated effort to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism in the United States.
Receiving tankers like this one, sold by Israel, allow South Africa to pursue its enemies far beyond its borders. Since 1977, when the UN embargoed arms sales to South Africa, Israel has sold everything from missiles and jet fighters to howitzers and guns. They ship communications equipment, radar systems, and intelligence technology.
One weapon the Rhodesians would come to admire and adopt for both military and civilian use is the Uzi submachine gun. Rhodesia would buy its first batch of Uzis from Israel in the late 1960s, with a few also eventually being manufactured in Rhodesia itself under license. However, the Uzi would be costly for the Rhodesians to manufacture in large enough quantities due to the costly importation of certain parts for the weapon from Israel, making the overall production of the Uzi as a whole an expensive proposition. Despite sanctions, Israel would continue to trade with Rhodesia, albeit in secret.